What if you achieved the ultimate symbol of success? The seven-figure salary, the corner office, the title, only to realize you were more bankrupt than you'd ever been in your life. This isn't just a story about financial success, it's a story about its true cost and the journey of having to burn it all down to feel human again. For centuries, there's been an understanding that great prosperity requires a great sacrifice. It's a fundamental transaction, a trade. What I didn't realize, stepping into the world of high finance, was that this ancient transaction was still the core of the playbook. The gods are different now. They're called shareholder value, quarterly earnings, and market dominance, but they are just as hungry. And the sacrifice they demand isn't some abstract offering. It's you. It's your time, your health, your relationships, and the very core of who you are. This is the story of how I made that trade, piece by piece, until there was almost nothing left of me on the balance sheet. It never starts with a conscious decision to sell your soul. It starts with ambition, a raw, gnawing hunger to prove yourself. I didn't come from money. My world was built on careful budgets. For me, wealth wasn't about luxury, it was about escape. The escape from the fear of a sudden medical bill, the escape from the quiet desperation that I saw growing up. I looked at finance as the ultimate meritocracy, a place where the hours you put in had a direct correlation to the number in your bank account. And I was ready to work. When I landed the job at a top-tier investment bank, it felt like I'd been given a golden ticket. The signing bonus alone was more than my parents made in a year. Walking into that lobby for the first time, I was intoxicated by the sheer velocity of it all. This was where the world was shaped. The first year was a trial by fire. We were told, look to your left, look to your right. Only one of you will be here in 3 years. It wasn't a threat, it was a challenge. And I loved it. 90-hour weeks became a badge of honor. Sleeping under my desk wasn't a sign of failure, it was a symbol of commitment. The firm wasn't just encouraging this, it was engineering it. They built a perfectly frictionless environment for endless work. Dinner was free if you ordered it after 8 p.m. There was an on-site gym for a 2 a.m. workout, a car service to take you home so you wouldn't waste precious minutes the next morning. These weren't just perks, they were tools designed to extract every last ounce of your productive capacity. And the rewards were immediate. My first real bonus felt like a glitch in reality. I paid off my student loans in one go. I moved into an apartment overlooking the city. I wore suits that cost more than my first car. When I went home, I wasn't just me anymore. I was the one who had made it. I was living the dream. Or more accurately, I was living the version of the dream that is sold to us. The one that looks incredible on the outside. But like any brilliantly marketed product, you don't ask what it's made of, you just buy it. And I bought it all.
The problem with the seven-figure salary is the assumption that it solves all your problems. It does solve all your money problems, but it creates a new set of problems that money can't touch. The cracks didn't appear overnight. It was a slow erosion, and it started with my health. My body was the first to show the stress. Sleep became a luxury I'd catch up on later. My diet was whatever could be eaten over a keyboard. I was running on a constant drip of cortisol and anxiety. I remember one afternoon staring at a financial model. My vision started to blur. My heart began to pound against my ribs. I stumbled into a bathroom stall, convinced I was having a heart attack. It was a panic attack. My body was sending a signal in the only language I couldn't ignore. The doctor I saw, a specialist for executives, called it the cost of doing business and wrote a prescription for beta blockers. I was 28. This is what I now call expensive money. My salary was huge, but what was the real net profit when you subtracted the cost of medication and the long-term damage to my nervous system? The money was expensive because it was bought with the currency of my own well-being. Then came the relationships. Time, the only truly finite resource, wasn't mine. It belonged to the firm. I was supposed to be the best man at my best friend's wedding. I had to back out a week before because a multi-billion-dollar merger was closing. I delivered the news over a conference call from an office in Hong Kong at 4 a.m. I can still hear the disappointment in his voice. It's a once-in-a-lifetime deal, I told him.
trying to justify it. It never occurred to me that his wedding was also a once-in-a-lifetime deal. I sent an obscenely expensive gift, trying to patch a hole with money. I missed birthdays, anniversaries, funerals. My family stopped expecting me to be there. I was becoming a ghost in my own life, a successful, wealthy, and utterly absent man. But the deepest crack was ethical. This was the moment I realized I wasn't just sacrificing myself. I was part of a system that sacrificed others. My team was tasked with restructuring a manufacturing company. In the deal room, the playbook called it optimizing for efficiency. On the ground, it meant laying off 3,000 people from a town whose economy depended on that one factory. I flew to the Midwest and presented my slides filled with cold data that justified the workforce reduction. I used the sanitized language of the boardroom to describe the destruction of a community. That night, celebrating the successful deal over a lavish dinner, I looked around at my colleagues laughing, and I felt a profound sense of revulsion. We were celebrating a victory paid for by the livelihoods of thousands of families. My 7-figure salary wasn't just my reward, it was my cut. That was the night I understood. I hadn't just made a deal, I had become the deal itself.
The breaking point wasn't a single dramatic event. It was a quiet, cold realization. The ethical compromise of the factory layoffs had hollowed me out. The glow of success had faded, revealing the ugly framework beneath. I was in the office on a Saturday night. The city below was a tapestry of lives being lived. My life was contained in a glass box. I was working on a pitch deck for a hostile takeover, another maneuver that would enrich a few at the expense of many, and I just stopped. I stared at a slide titled Synergistic Headcount Reductions, a euphemism so detached from reality it made me feel sick. Headcount, not people. I thought about the men in that Midwestern boardroom. I thought about my friends' wedding photos, where I was missing. I thought about the prescription bottles in my cabinet. And for the first time in years, I let myself feel the full weight of the trade-offs. I turned my chair to face the window. My reflection stared back, a pale, exhausted stranger. The accolades, the bonus, the title, they had no substance. The only real things were the costs, the relationships I had broken, the health I had squandered, the moral lines I had crossed. The question that had driven my entire career was, how do I become successful? But sitting there, a new question emerged. What is the long-term value here? What was the point of this relentless accumulation if the process stripped away everything that gives life meaning? I was building a gilded cage around myself, so focused on the craftsmanship of the bars that I hadn't realized I was the prisoner.
That was the moment of clarity. There was no thunderclap, just a quiet, unassailable truth. I could not do this for one more day. The fear of leaving was immense. My entire identity was tied to this job. Who was I without the title? But the horror of staying, of becoming that hollowed-out reflection permanently, was infinitely greater. I stood up. I left the pitch deck unfinished. I walked past the empty desks, monuments to other sacrificed weekends. I took nothing with me. I walked out of the revolving doors and into the cool night air. The deal was off. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever felt trapped by a job that looked perfect on paper? That feeling where your head tells you that you should be grateful, but your gut is telling you to run? Let me know in the comments below. I read every one, and I genuinely believe it's time we started having more honest conversations about what success really costs. And if these are the kinds of conversations you want to be a part of, consider subscribing. Walking into my boss's office on Monday was surreal. He was a titan of the industry. He thought I was coming in to talk about the takeover deal. When I told him I was resigning, effective immediately, the words didn't compute. "Is it another firm? Are they offering you more?" he asked, already calculating a counter offer. "No," I said. "I'm not going anywhere. I'm just leaving." He stared at me with a kind of pitying contempt. In his playbook, there was no out. There was only up or over to a rival. The idea of simply stopping was a sign of weakness, a failure of nerve. He told me I was making the biggest mistake of my life. But as I walked out of that office, a weight I hadn't been fully conscious of began to lift. The first few weeks were a disorienting detox. My body, accustomed to running on adrenaline, didn't know what to do with stillness. I had to relearn the fundamentals of living. I cooked my own meals. I went for long walks. I sat in a park and read a novel on a Tuesday afternoon, a small act of rebellion that felt more luxurious than any first-class flight. I began the work of rebuilding the bridges I had burned. The phone call to my best friend was the hardest. I didn't make excuses. I just apologized for my absence, for prioritizing a deal over our friendship. It was the start of a long road back. I reconnected with my family, not as the success story, but just as a son and brother. I showed up, I listened, I was present. The return on these simple acts of connection was higher than any trade I had ever made. My definition of wealth underwent a complete transformation. I realized I had been chasing its most superficial form. True wealth isn't just a number in a bank account. First, it's having control over your own time. Second, it's having the physical and mental health to enjoy that time. And above all, it's having deep, meaningful relationships. This is the real fortune. I want to be clear. I know walking away from a job like that is an immense privilege. The years of overwork gave me a financial cushion most people don't have. But the principle is universal. You don't have to burn your life down to reclaim it. But you can start asking the hard questions. You can define what enough means to you, instead of letting your company define it for you. You can decide what you are and are not willing to sacrifice. The transaction is happening whether you acknowledge it or not. The only choice you have is whether to be an active negotiator.
Looking back, I don't see the man in the corner office as a failure. I see him as someone who got lost. He bought into a very seductive story about success, flew too close to the sun and got burned. But the burning away of the excess, the ego, the ambition revealed something more fundamental. The great irony is that I feel richer now than I ever did. My life is smaller, quieter, and infinitely more valuable. The ROI on a morning coffee with a friend is higher than any trade I ever made. The dividend from being present for my family is more stable than any blue chip stock. Money is a powerful tool, but it is a terrible master and a horrible scorecard for a life. The most important things you will ever spend are your time, your attention, and your integrity. Be careful what you buy with them.
My journey wasn't about rejecting wealth. It was about redefining it. It was about buying my soul back from the company store. And it was the best investment I have ever made. If this story resonated with you, please consider sharing it with someone who might be asking themselves these same questions. You might be giving them the permission they need to write their own playbook. Thank you for watching.